hidden in plain sight across the globe, are the world's most expensive mistakes. These are the ghost mega-projects, places where the dreams of architects, the billions of investors, and the hubris of nations collided, leaving behind silent, concrete monuments to what might have been. Most documentaries focus on the spectacle of the ruins, showing you the dust and the broken glass of abandoned lobbies. But there is a much darker, much more complex story behind these failures. A story of systemic negligence, ignored geological warnings, and the invisible hand of geopolitics. Today, we are going beyond the surface-level ghost town narrative to perform a forensic autopsy on one of the most misunderstood mega-projects of the century, Forest City. Stick with me until the very end, because we are about to reveal the hidden truth of 2026. How a project once written off as a $100 billion death trap is attempting a total system reboot, and why this story is the most important case study in modern urban planning. The story of this project begins not with architecture, but with a fatal assumption. The assumption that you could simply manufacture land, situated in the Johor Strait. The project was billed as the Singapore of the South, a lush, green, futuristic utopia that would redefine how we live. But the engineering reality was vastly different. To build this city, millions of cubic meters of sand were pumped into the ocean to reclaim 1,600 hectares of seabed. The pace was relentless. It was an industrial marathon where the clock was the only judge. However, soil, especially marine sand, needs time to settle. It needs to consolidate. By pushing construction at a breakneck speed, the developers ignored the foundational law of geotechnical engineering. You cannot cheat the land. Forensic audits performed years later revealed that the ground beneath the towers was settling unevenly, leading to structural cracks that plagued the early phases of the build. It was a masterclass in why you never rush the foundation of a mega city. But the engineering failure was only the beginning. The project was designed to be a parking spot for international capital, specifically catering to wealthy investors from abroad. The entire business model hinged on the assumption that the capital flow would remain uninterrupted. But in the volatile world of international finance, a single policy shift can destroy a 10-year strategy. When strict currency controls were implemented, the lifeline of the project was severed almost overnight. The sales office, which once saw hundreds of transactions per day, suddenly became an echo chamber. This is the danger of the target demographic trap. When you build a city for a single class of buyer from a single region, you are not building a city, you are building a financial instrument. And when that instrument fails, the city is left with no organic economic life. There were no local businesses, no schools, and no infrastructure to support a permanent domestic population. The city was a luxury hotel with no guests. As we look at the data from the past 4 years, the situation has undergone a radical transformation that the viral internet videos completely missed. In 2024, the Malaysian government made a decisive, top-down intervention, designating the island as a special financial zone. They introduced 0% tax for family offices and slashed corporate taxes for fintech firms. This wasn't just a political announcement. It was a total change in the island's function. We are no longer talking about a residential project. We are talking about a tax-efficient corporate headquarters. The impact on the local economy has been stark. With 20,000 residents from over 20 different nationalities now registered, the city has finally achieved what many thought was impossible: organic growth. The shift in data is undeniable. Office rents in the financial center have climbed by 267% since 2024. And for the first time, the daily activity is driven by professionals rather than tourists. Let's talk about the forensics of the recovery. The stabilization process that saved the towers was a massive, multi-year underground operation. Engineers had to inject specialized, high-density grout into the substrate beneath the key skyscraper foundations to prevent further subsidence. This was a silent, invisible task that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, a figure that the original developer could not have afforded. It was only when the government took operational control that the true scale of the necessary repairs was realized. They essentially nationalized the maintenance of the island's facilities, guaranteeing that the infrastructure would not simply decay. This is the big reveal of 2026. The Ghost City narrative was never about the buildings being dead. It was about the developer's model being broken. Once the state stepped in as the landlord, the risk of total abandonment was eliminated. The geopolitical landscape of this project is just as complex. It sits a stone's throw from Singapore, one of the most expensive business environments on the planet. By offering a discount bin alternative, a tax haven 5 minutes from a global financial hub, Malaysia is performing a geo-economic move that is changing the trade dynamics of the region. They are effectively capturing the capital that finds Singapore too competitive or too regulated. This is why the institutional investors are returning. They are not interested in the luxury beach lifestyle that was pitched in the early brochures. They are interested in the tax-efficient jurisdiction. This is a cold, calculated move in the game of regional trade, and it is working. The diplomatic tension that once surrounded this project has softened as both Malaysia and Singapore realize that a thriving Johor Strait is better for everyone than a rotting, abandoned monument. But we must also address the limitations that remain. A city is more than its tax code. While the office towers are filling up, the residential sections struggle to provide the everyday amenities that a thriving city requires. Public transport remains the missing link. The original plan for a light rail system was scrapped, and the reliance on private vehicles remains a significant hurdle. In 2026, the traffic congestion between the island and the main regional highways is a major friction point. The city planners are now in the process of negotiating with private logistics firms to implement an electric bus rapid transit system. This is the classic struggle of mega projects. Building the high-rises before you have the transit grid to support them. A city cannot survive on corporate tax breaks alone. It requires a workforce, and that workforce needs a way to move. The takeaway from this isn't that mega projects are inherently doomed. The takeaway is that a city is a living organism, and if you build one based on a static, short-term financial bet, it will inevitably fail. It is only when a city evolves, when it shifts from a luxury retreat to a functioning economic zone, that it can survive. The project in the Johor Strait is now a case study in resilience. It shows that in the world of high-stakes real estate, death is not permanent if you have a government willing to rewrite the rules. We have tracked the numbers from the collapse to the stabilization, and the evidence is clear. This city is a survivor of its own design. As you look at other abandoned projects around the world, the half-built airports, the ghost malls, the luxury developments rotting in the sun, ask yourself this: is the project truly dead, or is the narrative just stale? Many of these failures are simply waiting for a pivot. They are waiting for a policy change that aligns their existence with the actual needs of the economy rather than the speculative dreams of the developer. The history of urban planning is littered with failures, but it is also full of examples of successful transformations. The ghost is gone, and the future of this strait is just beginning. What once looked like a financial graveyard is today a case study in how to pivot a billion-dollar catastrophe into a regional economic asset. The lesson here is for every investor, every engineer, and every dreamer. The infrastructure of a city is static, but the policy of a city is fluid. And in the world of 2026, fluidity is the only currency that matters. History, as it turns out, is rarely finished. It is simply waiting for the next chapter. Stay curious, because the truth of our global systems is often hiding behind a narrative that hasn't been updated in years. The world is changing, and the cities we once left for dead are finally waking up.